The automobile changed everything. This is the story of how a single machine rewrote the way human beings live, work, and travel across the surface of the earth. In a little over 100 years, the automobile climbed from a hand-built curiosity for the wealthy to roughly 1.5 billion vehicles on the road today. And along the way, it reshaped our cities, our jobs, our safety, and even the way we spend a quiet Sunday afternoon. Let's go back to where it all began. It began in Germany. On January 29, 1886, a man named Karl Benz filed a patent for a vehicle propelled by a gas engine. And that document, German patent number 37,435, is widely regarded as the birth certificate of the modern automobile. Around the same time, Gottlieb Daimler was developing his own motor carriage. And together, these German pioneers would establish what we now know as Daimler-Benz. Steam-powered road vehicles had come before it, since Nicholas Joseph Cugnot built one as far back as 1769. But Benz built the first practical production gasoline car. Those early days were rough. On one of his first test drives, Benz reportedly steered the thing straight into a wall, which may well have been the first car crash in history. And because the earliest cars had no proper fuel tank, his son, Eugen, would jog alongside the vehicle carrying gasoline. The person who truly proved the automobile could be useful, though, wasn't Karl at all. It was his wife. On August 5, 1888, Bertha Benz took one of the cars and drove roughly 65 miles from Mannheim to Pforzheim, bringing her 2 teenage sons along for the journey, a trip now memorialized across Germany as the Bertha Benz Memorial Route. Series production started that very same year. For the next couple of decades, the automobile stayed exactly what it had always been, which meant scarce, expensive, unreliable, and built almost entirely by hand. A car remained a luxury reserved for the rich. And this is where the story crosses the Atlantic and lands in Detroit, Michigan. On June 16, 1903, Henry Ford and a group of investors launched the Ford Motor Company. Ford carried a vision he stated plainly, promising to build a motor car for the great multitude, one priced so low that no man making a good salary will be unable to own one. 5 years later, on October 1st, 1908, he delivered exactly that, and its name was the Model T. The Model T didn't merely sell well, it conquered the country. By 1918, roughly half of every car in the United States wore the Model T badge, and at its peak, the car accounted for as much as 40% of all American sales. By the time the last one rolled off the line on May 26, 1927, about 15 million had been built, setting a single model production record that held all the way until 1972, when the Volkswagen Beetle finally edged past it. Here's the thing, the real revolution wasn't the car itself, it was the way Ford built it. On December 1, 1913, he fully implemented the moving assembly line at his Highland Park plant, borrowing the idea from the meatpacking houses of Chicago and Cincinnati, where overhead trolleys carried carcasses from worker to worker. Ford simply flipped the concept around, putting things together on the move instead of taking them apart, and the result was staggering. Assembling a single chassis had once consumed more than 12 hours. After the line started moving, that same job took about 1 hour and 33 minutes. All that efficiency pushed the price down and down again. $850 is roughly what a Model T cost in 1908, and by the middle of the 1920s, the figure had collapsed to as low as $260. For the very first time, an ordinary working family could afford a car of their own. There was a human cost buried in that assembly line, and it's the part of the story that often gets left out. The work proved repetitive and grueling, and the men on the floor hated it, which meant that by late 1913, labor turnover at Ford had climbed to roughly 380%. Workers were quitting almost as fast as the company could hire them. The fix arrived on January 5, 1914, when Ford announced something genuinely radical, the $5 8-hour day, more than doubling the previous minimum of about $2.34 for a 9-hour shift. It wasn't quite a simple raise. since the company structured it as a profit-sharing plan with conditions and monitored workers through what Ford called his sociological department. But it rewrote the math of American labor, and it was designed in large part to stop people from walking out the door. Ford grasped something deep about the bond between business and ordinary people. As he put it, one's own employees ought to be one's own best customers. Pay the workers enough to buy the very thing they're assembling, and you build your own market from the inside. The car had become affordable, which raised an obvious problem. Where exactly were people supposed to drive it? That question leads straight into one of the largest construction projects in American history. On June 29, 1956, President Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act into law. $25 billion is what the original plan authorized, all of it aimed at building 41,000 miles of interstate highway over about a decade, making it the largest public works effort the country had ever attempted. Eisenhower's enthusiasm came from hard experience, shaped by a painfully slow Army convoy that crawled across the country back in 1919 and by the German Autobahn he had admired during the Second World War. The payoff turned out to be enormous because a coast-to-coast trip that swallowed 2 months for that 1919 convoy would eventually take roughly 5 days. And here's a figure worth holding on to. The interstate system makes up only about 1% of America's road mileage, yet it carries close to 23% of all traffic. The automobile was reshaping everything around it now. The suburbs, oil, steel, rubber, motels, fast food, the entire texture of modern life. All that speed and freedom carried a darker number alongside it. Between 1899 and 2023, nearly 4 million people died on American roads, and the death rate, measured against population, reached its grim peak back in 1937. For a long stretch, that danger got treated as nothing more than the price of progress, until one man flatly refused to accept it. In November of 1965, a consumer advocate named Ralph Nader published a book called Unsafe at Any Speed, taking direct aim at the auto industry and specifically targeting the Chevrolet Corvair, branding the car's handling defects one of the greatest acts of industrial irresponsibility. General Motors fired back by hiring private investigators to dig up dirt on him, and the move backfired spectacularly. GM's president, James Roche, found himself hauled before a Senate subcommittee on March 22, 1966, where he was forced to apologize, telling the room, "To the extent that General Motors bears responsibility, I want to apologize here and now." Nader later settled a harassment suit against GM, and he poured that money into funding an entire generation of consumer advocacy groups. The whole episode helped push through the National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act of 1966, the creation of the Department of Transportation, and eventually the federal safety agency we still rely on today. The story does carry another side, since a 1972 government report later concluded the Corvair handled at least as well as comparable vehicles of its era. None of that erased the cultural shift because safety had become the industry's responsibility, not merely the drivers. The numbers tell the rest. Back in 1913, more than 33 people died for every 10,000 vehicles on the road. And by 2023, that figure had plunged to about 1.57 per 10,000, an improvement of 95%. This transformation came through mandatory safety technologies like seatbelts, airbags, anti-lock brakes, and crumple zones. In 2024, estimated traffic deaths in the United States dropped below 40,000 for the first time since 2020. Across the world, the industry was absorbing a very different lesson. After its founding in 1937, Toyota developed what became known as the Toyota Production System in Japan, a philosophy built on eliminating waste through ideas like just-in-time manufacturing and lean manufacturing principles. Taiichi Ohno, the man often called the father of that system, described the goal in simple terms, explaining that the whole point was to watch the timeline running from the moment a customer places an order to the moment the company collects the cash, then shrink that line by stripping out everything that adds no value. That way of thinking would ripple far beyond cars and into manufacturing everywhere. which carries us into the present and into a transformation that might rival the Model T itself. In 2003, Tesla Motors was founded by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, with Elon Musk joining as chairman and lead investor in February of 2004. The Roadster arrived in 2008, and with it, the age of the electric car was finally underway. The change since then has come fast and hard. Electric vehicles accounted for about 18% of all cars sold worldwide in 2023, and the following year, that number crossed 17 million vehicles, clearing 20% of global sales for the first time ever. China dominates this new world completely, since EVs made up almost half of every car sold there in 2024, and the country produced more than 70% of the world's electric vehicles. In a fitting changing of the guard, the Chinese company BYD overtook Tesla as the world's largest seller of all electric cars for the full year of 2025. So where does all of this leave us? In a little over a century, we traveled from Karl Benz steering his invention into a wall to roughly 1.5 billion vehicles moving across the planet. The automobile built our suburbs, paved our highways, employed millions of people, forced us to take safety seriously. And now, once again, it is reinventing itself right in front of our eyes. It changed far more than how we travel. It changed how we live. 100 years behind the wheel, and the road ahead is still wide open.